Chris asked me to please present Isabel Reinoso, which is our next speaker. She's currently the president of the Urantia Colombia Association. She has occupied different positions for 20 to 25 years in the Bogota Association. She's also been the president of the Bogota Association and the Colombian Association. She has helped on many book fairs in Colombia and also outside of Colombia. And she's traveled throughout the whole country, and she's discovered and she's helped to create many, many groups that we never even knew existed. She is a great speaker. She's a great friend. And so, well, please go ahead, Isabel. Thank you. Thank you, Andres, for your presentation. And good evening to everyone. Good day to everyone, because we are with people from every part of the world, and some of you may be in the morning hours, some are in the night hours, and some are in the evening hours. Very quickly, I want to make this small presentation, and this is, I hope not to tire you, because we coincide with Jeannie, because I'm going to talk about the spirit of truth as well. I simply wanted to say that I worked with this with all the love in the world, because the truth is, this is what I feel the most in my heart right now. That divine love from the Father that fills us, that pushes us at every single moment to provide and give that love to each of our brothers or sisters. So we're going to begin now with my sharing my screen. But how do I do this? Great. So we're going to talk about Jesus. The divine legacy, the biggest divine legacy that our universe has given us. This virtues, it has many, many virtues. It's sincere, free of every affectation, genuine. He lived the truth. He was loyal with truth, reasonable, available, sincere. He had a very practical sense, and his common sense was intensified. He was free of all extravagant tendency or eccentricism. He was never capricious nor hysterical. He was extraordinary and very appropriate. His personality was extremely, very well reserved. He had no fears either. His enthusiasm was divine, and it was constant. He was never a fanatic. Emotionally speaking, he was very active. He was never frivolous. He was very imaginative and practical. He faced life's reality. He was not prosaic. On the contrary, he was very prudent, but he was never a coward. He was comprehensive, understandable, but never sentimental. He was singular, but not eccentric. And he was pious, but not... his originality was spontaneous. He spoke with confidence, without a doubt. And he taught with authority, absolute authority. He didn't discard the true pearls. His teaching, the teachings of his predecessors, he used it. On the contrary, he always used pearls of wisdom that he captured from his predecessors. He always taught and emphasized love and mercy. He lived it. He lived love and mercy. In that place, instead of fear and sacrifice, he never taught fear. His vision was very broad. He preached the gospel to all peoples and all persons. He was free of different vicissitudes in his mind. His heart was comprehensive. His faith was perfect, but he never was presumptuous. Jesus never wavered in his faith. He was immune to disenchantment. He was impermeable to persecution. Failure never affected him. He always had energy to get back up and get ahead. He loved men like brothers, and as they truly were, like he truly was, our Father. He was very happy. He was not a blind optimist without reason. His attitude was tranquil. He trusted God, and his faith was firm in man as well. He considered all men because he loved them and he believed in men. He was faithful to his convictions and firm in his devotion of doing the will of his Father in heaven. Always, he was generous. Generosity without limits. Never was he wasteful or extravagant. He taught to believe, to receive salvation. He was sincere, but always he was gentle. He was always cordial. He spoke freely about his love for the sinner and his hate for the sin itself. He was sincere, which was surprisingly infallible, and it was very just. He deeply drank from the cup of human pain. He controlled his enthusiasm and it never allowed it to control him. He had no reserve. He was dedicated fully to his Father's affairs. He was not a man of suffering. He never embraced pain. He overcame it always. He was a soul filled with happiness. When duty demanded, he was always there to provide this, and he crossed the shadow of death. He was jubilous, humble. His braveness was just as big as his patience. He was never in a hurry. His debonair was clean. He was magnificent, but never did he express that fear. His key words were, "Do not fear." His bravery and his courage was heroic, linked to discretion and controlled by reason. His courage was born from his faith, not from the fear or the blind presumptions. The virtues of Master Jesus were marvelous, and the book shows us, we can observe them throughout his life's histories. Jesus was a human personality that was perfectly unified, and he taught us how to achieve things. And today, just like in Galilee, he continues to unify mortal experience and coordinating great human endeavors. He unifies life. He ennobles characters and simplifies experience. He enters human minds in order to elevate, transform, and transfigure it. He is literally the truth. If a man has within him, he has Jesus within him, he is a new creature. Old things pass away and they have become new. What qualities did he have? Many, many great quantities of quality. I don't have enough time here to express all his qualities, but let's just name a few. Jesus, when he was born at zeros in a marvelously spiritually awakened family. It was a family with huge values. When he was 5, his thought adjuster arrived, and at that moment, he became in charge of protecting the human child. At 6 years of age, he learned Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew. He studied flowers, plants, stars, animals. He was very passionate with observing the beauty of nature and the details of nature. When he was 8 years old, he learned how to play the harp. He learned how to milk cows and manufacture cheese. He was a great mathematician student. When he was 9, with his own bank and tools, he started to build things under his father's direction. When he was 10, he became aware of his mission. He started to assist advanced schools. He learned how to fish. He started loving hiking and mountains. He started to actually work with tellers. He's a great weaver, just like his mom. He learned how to do clay working and making clay figures. He was an expert in market and construction. His vacations, he always spent them with his uncles, either maternal or paternal uncles. And just like each of them, he learned a different trade. When he was 11, he learned caravans from a foreigner. And he socialized with every foreigner he can talk to. He loved their customs. He loved to touch upon their taste, their languages. When he was 12, for 4 full days, he spent 4 days in the temple asking questions to those great teachers, those that taught. He had the capacity to teach as well, and he did so as well at 12. When he was 14, he worked with leather works. He was an expert carpenter and construction workers. He assumed the responsibilities of his home when his father Joseph died. He administered wisely his family capital. He was an expert in telling stories and storytelling and reading the scriptures. He loved to play with young children, and he loved to allow them to play with wooden blocks and invent games. He learned agriculture as well, and especially to harvest wheat. He learned how to manage the different decrees, and he learned woodworking and metalworking. He basically learned all the different trades that were used during those times. When he was 15, he was like the father to his brothers. He cultivated the land for his own subsistence. He did his first sermon in the synagogue. He learned how to interpret maps. When he turned 16, he developed physical plenitude. He was a strong and robust man. He played with children quite a bit. He was serious and sober. He was lovable and comprehensive. He had a very attractive smile and a peaceful smile. His voice was musical, but it showed authority. He manifested a combination of the human and the divine. When he was only 16, he had an acute and analytical mind, an oscillating temperament, but it was very energetic, which gave him a very strong personality, which caught everyone's attention, and it was attractive to his young friends. When he was 18, he sold properties to pay taxes and buy tools. He became a member of a philosophical group, and he entered a philosophical discussion groups. He started selling butter, cheese, and doves, and he taught this trade to his brothers. When he was 19, he sold his harp to pay the studies of one of his sisters. He rejected the love of Rebecca because he had clarity that he had a commitment with his father's role and his father's mission. When he was 20, he abandoned the tradition to celebrate the Passover with the lamb, and he truly understood that what his mission was. He truly understood what his mission was. When he was 22, he worked in a repair shop for caravans. He delegated to his brother Santiago the responsibility of his family and his family finances, and he lived for 6 months in Sepphoris as a metal worker. He understands the mentality and the habits of the Gentiles. He prepares the withdrawal of leaving his home and leaving his family, but he prepared it in an intelligent fashion, in a slow fashion. When he was 23 in Damascus, he helped to plan and organize a philosophical religious school. When he was 25, he spent two days in jail accompanying his brother Judah, whom had faced Roman soldiers to defend a young Jewish girl. When he was 27, he left home, and he had acute interest in his own spiritual well-being. And in Capernaum, he created new methods to build boats under the direction of Simon Zebedeus, and he directed services in the synagogue, and he achieved the highest levels of contact with his thought adjuster. He developed a curving technique for wooding via using vapor and steam, and he created the lightest and fastest boat of the time because he knew how to actually work with wood. At 28, he coordinated with John Zebedee the sending of money to his family. The money that he had earned, by working for John Zebedee's father. And he asked John to administer that mother so his mother and his family would never have needs. And he can actually respond for the money that he wanted to send for years to his mother. In Jerusalem, he visited many different religious academies. He worked at that particular moment for Gonat, whom traveled with his son Ganit throughout the Mediterranean region so that his son could truly understand and learn how to manage his own business. So Jesus became an interpreter for Ganit. Gonat gave him a 1-year salary beforehand, and he worked as an interpreter and tutor for his son Ganit for 2 years. They traveled throughout the Mediterranean, through Alexandria, Cyrene, Carthage, Rome, Tarentum, Athens, Chipre, Damascus, Babylonia, and Urmia. In fact, they crossed the northern lake in Italy and went to a city. When he was 30, he joined a caravan that was going from Ur to Damascus. In a caravan, he substituted somebody that had fallen sick, and he went all the way to the Caspian Sea. That was a great adventure of exploration and of personal ministry. In Urmia, which is Persia, he gave several conferences about sovereignty and peace. When he was 31 years old, he was able to achieve the circuits of understanding and personality. He resolves the Lucifer rebellion. He technically ends the rebellion, as was asked by his older brother Emmanuel. In Capernaum, he worked for several months in different ships and embarkations. When he was 32 years old, he had a power of spiritual attraction during his teachings. Many people were already calling him master and teacher through his lucid force and his understandings, and in his attitude and his alert mind and his incomparable wisdom and tolerance, his patience, his humbleness and sweetness, which was sublime, always. When he was 33, he expressed healing and curing powers with several people. That's when he multiplied the bread and the fish. He transformed water into wine. He pacified the water. He made them calm. He also learned how to understand what others were thinking. He lives the transfiguration, which the apostles imagined when they saw him speaking with Gabriel and with the Father of the constellations. The apostles were not able to understand many things that the Master was doing, especially the three that were always protecting and acting as bodyguards. He orders his apostles and his 12 apostles as well. He orders and organizes them, and he works directly with the 70, which were permanently receiving his teachings as well. Women were great support for his teachings. And also at that time was when resurrection, the appearances and the ascension, he accelerated the ascension process after his death. But what did he tell us specifically? What did the Master specifically say? He said, while I am with you in the flesh, I can only be one person in the midst of all of you. But when I have been freed of this natural mortal nature, then I will be able to come back as a spiritual inhabitant and be with each and every one of you and all the rest of the believers in this gospel of the kingdom. So the Son of Man will become a spiritual incarnation in the soul of all the true believers. In very little time, I will send my Spirit, this new teacher of truth that will live with each of you in your heart. And in that way, the children of light will be as one. And they will be attracted one towards the other. And that way, my Father and I can live in the soul in each of you and also in the heart of all other men that love us and make that love real in their experience by loving one and the other as I have loved you. And that which he promised and what the disciples said, the disciples that heard us, happened more or less at 1 p.m. The apostles, they were completely hidden for 40 days. They were super fearful. They were panicking. There was about 150 people, believers that were praying, believers in the gospel of Jesus, when perhaps all of a sudden, every single one of the people there, including the disciples, became aware that there was a new and deep feeling of happiness, of security, of safety, of spiritual confidence. This new awareness or consciousness of spiritual power was immediately felt by, they felt they had the need to immediately go out and proclaim the gospel. Peter stood up and declared that this is probably the spirit of truth that the master had promised. And he proposed that they go to the temple to begin to proclaim the good news that had been confided in them. And all of them did what Peter suggested. They went to the temple, the same place where Jesus, the master, had taught, and they spoke in Aramaic, and Greek, and Hebrew. Some of them were able to interpret other dialects from the people that were around there, and they spoke in all those different dialects. They were surprised to see what they were able to do. The different priests were very surprised. They were so shocked that they did nothing because they were fearful that so many people that were hearing them out and following them could perhaps be angered and go against them. At 4:30 p.m. in that same day, more than 2,000 new believers followed the apostles towards the Siloé, where Peter, Andrew, Santiago, and John baptized them in the name of the Master. It was already nighttime when they finished baptizing the multitude. It was very easy to, It was very easy to baptize all the multitude because at that time, the custom was to go to Nazareth, to the temple, to be baptized by priests. Jesus' message, as he preached and he lived in his own time, was an efficacious solution to spiritual needs that man had in that time when it was proposed, and even now, because he as a person has left the world, he still has sent in his place his spirit of truth for absolutely all humanity, whoever wants to receive it. This bestowal of the Spirit of the Son efficaciously prepared the minds of all normal men for the universal bestowal of the Spirit of the Father, the thought adjuster, upon all humanity. In a certain sense, this Spirit of truth is the Spirit of the universal Father and of the Son, the Creator's Son. Before this moment, before the bestowal and the spilling of the Spirit of truth, the adjuster could not reach all human beings. No, that was the first moral lesson. But with the pouring forth of the Spirit of truth, this new energy made it possible that creatures will have greater spiritual capacity and will be able to make that final necessary spiritual decision to have our own thought adjuster. And each creature at approximately 5 years or so of age, Jesus lived on earth and taught a gospel that redeemed man from superstition, that he was the son of evil and elevated man to the dignity of being the son of God through faith. That is a great legacy that we were given. The spirit of truth is the highest of the legacies that we were given. The spirit of truth is destined to live in man, and for each new generation formulate the message, Jesus' message once again, so that each new group of mortals that appears on the face of this earth will have a new and updated version of the gospel. A personal clarification and a collective guidance that will be an efficient or efficacious solution to that ever-changing and varying spiritual difficulty that man has. We don't have to buy it. It's within each of us. We simply have to be conscious of it and work together. Let's unite forces with that which was given to us so that we could enjoy this divine presence 24 hours a day. The first mission of the Spirit of Truth, obviously, is to promote and personalize truth. Given the fact that the understanding of truth is that the highest human liberty. Second, this Spirit's purpose is to destroy that orphan's sense in the believer, so we can feel that divine love that invades our soul, that promotes our personality to update itself. Don't make the mistake to intellectually wait for a powerful consciousness. The Spirit of Truth is already been filled. The Spirit never creates a conscious of itself. No, only awareness of Michael in all of us. From the very beginning, he taught that the Spirit would never talk about itself. The proof of an association with the Spirit of Truth can never be found in your awareness of the Spirit, but more in your experience. It's not in your awareness or consciousness, but in your experience of a heightened, direct association with Michael of Nebadon, our sovereign, our creator, our Father, universal Father. Men are sons of God, and through faith can we actually experiment this truth, which is ennobling. My self-bestowal was to help all men to know and learn and understand that they are sons of God. But that knowledge is not sufficient if they don't personally capture via faith, that saving faith, that they are truly the sons, the spiritual sons of the eternal Father. The gospel of the kingdom comprehends the Father's love and of service of his children on earth. You'll do good in understanding and studying the order and the plan and the methods of progress as they were implemented in the life Jesus of Michael on earth as Jesus when the Word was made flesh. You become actors of an episode that continues when the Word becomes the book. And great is the difference of these dispensations of the religion. But many are the actions that can be done throughout and can be learned from the previous ages with that great light that the fifth revelation has shed upon us. The book is being given or has been given to those who are ready for it. Let's not let's not impose it, let's not push it on anybody, because the person that is ready for it, before it arrives, millions or thousands of study groups have to be created before everyone's ready, and the book has to be translated to many languages. And that way the book will finally be ready when the battle for man's freedom is truly won, and when it becomes safe for the religion of Jesus and the liberty of man to truly be available. You also have to study the times that Jesus once again You should study and carefully take note of how the kingdom of heaven was inaugurated in the world. It was developed slowly, and was it deployed naturally and developed slowly, or did it come all of a sudden by force and with the spectacular vision of power? Was it evolutionary or was it revolutionary? Let's learn how to be patient with our souls. This association with a revelation of truth is part of the natural evolution of religion in this world. If we have unmeasured growth, if without any control, that is suicide. The Master warned us. I warn you to always remember that your mission among men is to proclaim the gospel of the kingdom, the reality of the paternity of God, and the truth of the brotherhood of man. Proclaim the truth of the good news, not simply one part of what the Savior gave us. And let's not change it as has occurred many times. Let's be loyal and faithful to this marvelous legacy that was given to us. Let's feel that enormous happiness to rejoice and celebrate at every instance the coming of this divine legacy that Jesus left us, living in his spirit of truth that penetrates every cell of our being, so that our mission amongst men will be the proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom and the reality of the paternity, the fatherhood of man, and the true brotherhood with the true show of the sonship of being sons of God is the brotherhood of man. And always be constantly selecting and being able to say with sincerity, may the will of my Father be done in myself as well for always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Isabel. We have time for questions and comments. If someone would like to raise your hand, we can have, I'll unmute you. And please raise your digital hand because I do not see everyone's face. So I have a question, if you don't mind. How have you been working to change the culture in your city, and how have you and your group been able to help bring forth the Urantia teachings just within your own environments? Tell us some of the good works you've been doing, because I know there are many.
Well, the truth is that my work begins with myself in 1986, before we even had the book in Spanish. Thanks to the translations that were being done by Mr. Holt, we were able to have certain pages translated from the book. But in 1995, when they gave me the Urantia book, because I participated in the first book fair that we had in Bogota, I sat down to study the book in an incredible way. At that moment, I had been a Marxist and Leninist and communist for many years, and I had been fighting for many years because I could never understand why we could accept such injustice and so much evil in the world, and I would always blame things. But when I touched upon the Urantia book and I started to read it and see it, I didn't read it in the order which it was written, unfortunately. I would jump from page to page. I decided to read from the first page to the last page, and I finally finished. And when I abandoned the work I had as an operational manager of a different agency. And from that moment in 1996, I think, I dedicated to study my life, to study the book and better understand it, and to teach anybody that wanted to listen. We in Bogota have created several associations of Urantia book readers. Currently, we've had a lot more success because we've been able to have a group of honest and sincere people, not that type of reader in the beginning that had their ego competed and they wanted to compete who had the most knowledge about the book. But we promised that we would give our soul and put our soul and heart into these teachings, and we became a family. And now the family grew because apart from the Bogota Association, now we have 6 local associations, and we're building our 7th one at this exact moment. With them, we have done great work at a national level. So, well, we have many study groups. Study groups may appear, disappear. There are a lot of distractions that happen so that the people don't get distracted and they locate amongst themselves. However, we continue with our efforts. We go to schools, we go to universities, we go to prisons, to libraries. We donate books whenever we have them to donate. We motivate group work. Currently, we have more than 15 virtual study groups due to this quarantine. And we've had these sessions on the weekends to try to unite all the different Latin American readers. Today, for example, we began the 12:30 event with the Urantia Colombia activities, and at 5, we had a Latin American meeting, and at 8, well, we joined you guys here in the rest of the world. That work is not done alone. Around me, I have very good people, beautiful people that surround me. That when we've needed money, it just appears. When we need a car, it appears. Everything that we've actually needed to do our work starts to appear slowly but surely. In Bogota, we have a radio station called the Fifth Revelation, Quinta Revelación, and this has also helped young people and other people to also help promote and disseminate the book in Colombia. At this moment, we don't really know how many people read the book because there are many, many people that close themselves off and read by themselves. There's many lone readers, and it's many years later or many time after when they discerned a bit more and when they started to learn the teachings, when they start to try to fraternize or try to start to join a group. That would be like a summary of what I can tell you about what we're doing in Colombia right now.
Do you know how many study groups you had in Bogota before the virus?
Sí, en Colombia.
Yes, in Colombia, I know. In Bogota and in Medellin, we had 23 study groups, and in all of Colombia, we had 72 study groups.
That is so beautiful. And on my first visit to Colombia, I was able to visit so many of the groups, and I was so impressed by the numbers. And I spread it around as the Bogota standard for study groups, that there should be one study group for every 500,000 people within a city, which at the time there were 7 million people in Bogota, and there were 14 study groups in that one city. And that every city across the world should strive to copy the Bogota standard for study groups.
Nosotros logramos
We were able to create so many groups because there were many people reading. There was many lone readers at that time. And we got to a city, we arrived, and I would, the people that I had phone numbers of in that place, I tried to hold a meeting. And sometimes I would find neighbors of the same block that didn't even know each other. And both of them were actually reading the book. And that allowed them to join and create new groups. And there are still many study groups that are only, there are some that are only 3-4 people. Study groups, but we said if we have 2 people that are willing, we are going to be able to start a study group. We had to obviously accompany them and motivate them and provide them with materials and keep calling them and be close to them in the beginnings, understanding what they need, what they wanted. And that's why we needed so many people. We need so many volunteers to accompany these groups, because it's not good to leave these people alone that are just starting this search, because beginning to read the book by yourself is not for everyone. Many people will abandon this on the way.
Marvin.
I'm curious, Isabel. First of all, I want to say thank you, muchas gracias, for a wonderful presentation, a whole survey of the life of Jesus. Very inspiring. So thank you. Can you say a little bit about the role, maybe one thing that's been unique in many of the Spanish-speaking cultures is the work of J.J. Benitez in popularizing some of the concepts and even the idea of the word Urantia. I'm curious, what's your sense of the part that has played in the interest in the Urantia book in the Latin-speaking, Spanish-speaking world?
Hay muchas personas
There are
que
many actual people that came to Urantia book via the Trojan horse. I was reading the second Trojan horse myself when, in what year was that? 1985, I think. Yeah, when a friend of mine told me, "Why are you reading that? Why don't you read the original where he actually took this information from?" And that's how I was induced to read the Urantia book, which was not even translated into Spanish at that moment. And there are many people in Colombia and in Bogota that read J.J. Benitez because they think that they better understand it. They think that the Urantia book is a bit more complex. When J.J. Benitez was in a book fair in Bogota, we had an actual stand there, a big stand, a Urantia book stand in the book fair. And they left, all of my colleagues left me and they went to J.J. Benitez to hear his presentation. And it was a terrible rainstorm. They all got wet, but they didn't care. They love him. I think I'm not too much of a friend. I think he's too much fantasy myself personally, but people do love him.
Well, I know there's been some interest and some efforts to try and get those books translated into English in the hopes that they would be as much of a popularizing influence as they have in the Spanish-speaking world. So it's an interesting feature of the Spanish-speaking readership.
sí.
Yes. At this particular moment in Colombia, we have a group or a team of people, very honest people, and they're very sincere of heart. They're studying how via the Urantia book, how are we going to help communities to transition after the pandemic ends. We're truly trying to prepare ourselves to create programs for people, for families, for societies, and for companies as well, because we're certain that after this, the world is going to change, and the world is going to need an alternative, a dignant alternative, and we have to replant our lives and our livelihoods, and that's what we're working on at this particular moment.
Well, if no one has another question, I have a question, but I don't want to preclude anyone else who wants to speak, Chris.
The only people who cannot raise your hands are co-hosts. So if you're a co-host and you want to speak up, do so. And otherwise, Marvin, it's you.
You know, the degree of spiritual hunger out in the world for the essential truths that Jesus taught, the intimacy of our relationship with God, and that's available. We can feel that love, that affection directly in our relationship with God. Just the heart of the spiritual message from the Urantia book. Have you all thought much about how to reach out to those people who may not be ready for the text in its entirety, but who are really hungry for the essential gospel of the Master? Because the revelators tell us we should be trying to reach everybody and to give the milk of truth to those who are babes in spiritual perception. So what you're doing there, the spirit of what you're doing is I think, is very exciting. And I'm curious if you thought about how to reach out, in addition with the text itself, to reach out with the spiritual truths more broadly.
Bueno, lo que más
Well,
trabajamos es
what we work the most is by leading by example. I'm an artisan myself, and I'm an expert in more than 35 different art techniques. So I go to any place and I establish an art school so that the community arrives, right? And as I start to teach a technique, a manual technique, or an artist has the handicraft, I always talk with communities, and I'm giving them my love and my knowledge at the same time. So it's more of that personal contact with individuals, with that child, with that young woman. I work with all types of ages. I've worked with people from 2 years of age to 90, transmitting these knowledges. And
llevo muchos años haciendo
I've been doing so for many years. And I remember that in Bogota, one person told me, and where are all those people that you've taught?
y yo como que,
And I said,
pues cada uno debe estar en su
well, each
casa.
of them should be at home. Why? What do you ask? Well,
Esa persona pretendía
that
que yo
person
estaba con ellos atrás mío,
thought that I was going to be behind them always.
pero
But
yo pienso que
I
cuando
think that when we
tiene la presencia
have
de Dios
the presence of God
en su conciencia, porque
in our own consciousness, because we know it's in every one of us, but I'm saying in each of our consciousness as well. When you feel that presence of the Spirit of truth and the Holy Spirit accompanying you, opening up all those doors, all those paths, telling you exactly where you should lead to, and telling you who needs your helping hand or your helping words. You simply free yourself up and let yourself be led, and your life becomes something which is very fantastic. It becomes marvelous, that you don't have any time for anything else, not even to eat or get tired or anything for that matter, or not even get bored for that matter, not even get sick or anything. Everything becomes transformed. For me, living these experiences hand in hand with my adjuster and my celestial Father has become an enormous theme park, because every time I have a difficulty, it becomes a challenge. It's a challenge that I overcome with the helping hand of my God.
a él 24 horas al
We have to
día.
live Him 24 hours a day. We have to live in Him, and we have to awaken with His hand, so He will teach us to do His divine will, because He's the one that knows the path and what He wants us to do. And if I give Him my will and my willingness and to His service, may it be Him to express Himself via each of my actions. Because when I try to be coherent between my thinking, my thought, my action, my deeds, I feel that I'm expressing Him. I'm expressing God in my actions, in my loving actions, in my mercy, and the goodness that I try to express. And it's an absolutely marvelous life. There's nothing that can compare it. I would never want to live a different life. Now that I've learned to live this one, I choose to stay here in communion with my Father, doing His will.
Es una elección personal.
It's a personal lesson, and each one will do so when he or she is ready. And we are only prepared when our heart is filled with sincerity. That's for that search. When there's no sincerity with myself or with my brethren and with God, then we're already dead.
Quisiera complementar.
Thank you. I wanted to complement or add to Marvin's question in terms of the influence that J.J. Benitez has had in the Hispanic and Spanish-speaking world. I personally had the opportunity of thanking him. I was one of those that got wet when we were in that stand and got wet and ran over there. And that same day, I told J.J. Benitez that I thanked him because thanks to his writings, they was the way where the Urantia had been disseminated the most, and he recognized that day that it was one of his largest sources of information where he took the information. So in the Latin or Hispanic world, we're very thankful with the writings, especially speaking the Trojan Horse and the Rebellion of Lucifer and the St. John's Testament, which are books that have influenced all our youth. I personally have a study group with 32 young people, and many times I don't even tell them about the texts that I come up with are from the Urantia book. I don't even tell them. There's no need to tell them that they're from the Urantia book to share with them the wisdom and the teachings of the book. Many times, in fact, I have young people that are very aseptic or non-believers. These are young people that believe in nothing. But when we speak about these truths that are contained in the book, they feel attracted. As an analogy, I have one time one of these young people wanted to find the dark Bible, and I said, why are you looking for the dark Bible or the black Bible? Because this is why are you looking for that? Because it talks about the devil or demons. He says, well, because that's what I'm looking. I want to understand the teachings of Lucifer. And I told him, you just got to the most correct place to find the teachings of that fallen angel. And I showed him on page 606 all the story of Lucifer, and he was so extremely enchanted with that story that immediately he said, this is what I was looking for, and he bought the Urantia book and took it from.
Es que son cosas maravillosas.
So there's some marvelous things that happen.
Gracias, Jotica.
Thank you, Jota.
Thank you. We've reached the end, but Marvin, if you have one more comment.
No, just this strikes me what you were sharing, Jotamusa, and also you, Isabel, that what the connection between what Alice said at the very beginning, that if you can find the language of the people that you're trying to love and minister to, get to know them, love them, learn the language of their lives, then you can speak to them in ways where you can go very economically right to where they need to be and either show them a passage in the go right directly to where it is they have the need. So I just love what Alice shared, is learn to speak their language, and then you can end up being a much more effective minister. And I sort of see that in the work that you're doing and the work that Isabel is doing, and bravo to you.
Thank you, Isabel, and thank you, everyone, for participating in this hour. A special thanks to our interpreter, Serapis, who's been doing the last 3 hours for us. He will be back to do another 6 hours tomorrow, so please come back, and everyone will be able to enjoy this cultural exchange that we have going on. So thank you, everyone.